This is a video I've been wanting to make for a long time. This is an introduction to the Permissionless Software Foundation. My name's Chris Troutner. I've been working on these ideas for about 2 years now, and I'm going to present my research on the way that I intend to build a community around open source software and Bitcoin Cash using SLP tokens. And you can find the website for this organization at psfoundation.cash. So let's start with who should not watch this video. Investors should not watch this video. ICO researchers, this is not an ICO. Speculators who are looking to trade tokens. There's nothing in this video for you. Feel free to wade through it, but it's going to be pretty boring and you're not going to get anything out of it. Who should watch this video? This video is intended to be watched first and foremost by Bitcoin Cash developers, as well as any crypto-curious JavaScript developers. If you're a JavaScript developer, there's definitely something here for you, even if you don't really identify with Bitcoin Cash. This is also for Bitcoin Cash fans and community members who just want to see the next cool thing that some of the developers are working on. This is also going to be a good video for entrepreneurs who are researching SLP tokens and their potential use cases. So here's an overview of what I'm going to cover in this video. I'm going to talk about the token, and then I'm going to talk about the actual organization, the Permissionless Software Foundation. What is it? I'm going to talk about the 3 facets of the PSF, which really help to explain the meat of what the PSF is intended to do. And then I'll talk about grants and the governance and the management, and finally the code. So this is going to be a long video, but I'm going to try and cover the most interesting stuff first, the most non-technical stuff first, and then I'll get into the more boring technical stuff like the governance and things like that. So on that note, I'll cover the token first, and I just want to emphasize that the token is not particularly important to the overall scheme of what this is trying to do, this organization, but people are going to fixate on it, so we might as well just talk about that first. First of all, the PSF token, I should actually just start by saying that it's an SLP token, which is a simple ledger protocol token. It's a prominent token protocol on the Bitcoin Cash network. So if you don't know what an SLP token is, you should start by researching that. I'm going to assume that people watching this are familiar with SLP tokens and maybe have some experience, like with the Spice token or what's another good token? USDH is a stable coin, SLP token. You can buy some of that at sideshift.ai. So this token, this PSF token, it is an SLP token, but it is not a security token. It's not an investment. There's no investment being sought. There's no price target or expectation of profits. This is an experiment, and it's unfortunately involving things that some people interpret as money, but it's really a software project, and I will get into more details about that. The token does not represent equity in any way, and the Permissionless Software Foundation is not a legal entity, and I'll get more into the specifics of just how not legal it is. Not illegal, just not legal. So the token is sort of a utility token, the PSF token. What is sort of popularly conceptualized as utility tokens, it will unlock token-only services. There will be a curated list or search engine, if you will, of websites that use Tor and IPFS, and you'll only be able to be listed on there by holding the token. That's one of the projects we're going to pursue. The token can be used for future discounts, like subscriptions to fullstack.cash. It allows participation in community governance, and that is sometimes identified as a property of a utility token, and it definitely lets you do that. But really, what I like to think of it is a merit token. The token is intended to represent labor or capital that you have put into the community, but primarily labor. Very little will it represent capital. The quantity of the tokens that you hold, it's really a governance token. So the quantity that you hold is the power that you have to participate in governance and shape the direction that the foundation takes, or the community really. It's intended to quantify your merit in a meritocracy. So the Permissionless Software Foundation is really intended to be a meritocracy, a community ruled through merit. The most important thing to keep in mind is that this is an experiment, and like experiments, it will probably fail, and it's okay if you don't like all these ideas. This is not intended to be taken too seriously at this point. And I can't emphasize enough that this is just an experiment. In particular, it's a software experiment. Okay, so the final thing to cap on the tokens is to talk about the token liquidity app. You can interact with that if you go to the psfoundation.cash website, and I have that right here in the browser. psfoundation.cash, that's where you should go. And when the page loads, it will load with this chart. Right now, the spot price of the token is equivalent to 4.1 cents in US dollars. And that is a calculated value. And I will go a little bit into that on how that's calculated. But the details on how it's calculated is here in the business plan. And I'm going to keep referring to the business plan because that's where all the technical information, all the facts, if you want to dig into this, that's where you should go. I'm going to try and keep this video at a high level, but I'm going to cover most of what's in that business plan. And so the token liquidity app, if you scroll down, you can interact with the token liquidity app. It only does two things. It exchanges Bitcoin Cash for PSF tokens, or it exchanges PSF tokens for Bitcoin Cash. That's its only thing that it does. And the way you interact with it is by sending Bitcoin Cash to this address, and then it will send you PSF tokens after 2 block confirmations. Or you can send your PSF tokens to this address, and it will send Bitcoin Cash back to your wallet, the originating address. So this will not work with all wallets. I recommend Badger Mobile or the Bitcoin.com wallet app, or the Badger Wallet browser extension. Those are the 3 wallets that will definitely work with this. Also, the Electron Cash SLP edition wallet will also work with this, and I believe those are the only Bitcoin Cash wallets that are PSF or that are SLP token aware and can interact with it. But that's the token liquidity app, and it exchanges the token. It calculates the exchange rate based on this curve. So right now we're at the red dot, and the exchange rate is 5,373 tokens per BCH. And this exchange rate will decrease as more Bitcoin Cash goes into the app, and it will eventually decrease down to 200 tokens per BCH, at which point it will be locked in. And I'll go into that in more detail. Well, actually, let me just dive right into that. So if you open the business plan, I'll go more into depth on this curve. Right here, this is the curve, and these are the equations. This is under the pseudo-stable peg section, under the token economics. I've got all the nitty-gritty details in here. But basically, the gist of this curve is that right here at 250, I think it's 250, is it 200? 200 or 250? 250 BCH. At 250 BCH, the curve goes linear. And this is where the exchange rate is locked in at 200 tokens per BCH. So this graph that you're looking at, it's Bitcoin Cash on the y-axis and tokens on the x-axis, and this is the balance of the wallet of the token liquidity app. So So you send it Bitcoin Cash and its balance goes up. You send it tokens, it's going to send you Bitcoin Cash, and its Bitcoin Cash balance is going to go down. And so it's the slope of this curve is the exchange rate. And basically, the really important thing that you need to take away from this graph is that this slope never goes to zero, and it's a nice straight line over here. And as long as it's a straight line, the exchange rate is going to be locked in at 200 tokens per BCH. And it's pegged to BCH, not the US dollar. That's another important aspect. But then this line curves here, and what that means is it doesn't go below zero. So you can never take all the Bitcoin Cash out of this app. As the Bitcoin Cash gets drained from it, it will adjust the exchange rate to this exponential curve, so it'll approach zero but never cross it. So you'll get a worse and worse exchange rate. And this is to prevent panics in the market of the token. It consciously destroys tokens in circulation, and it makes it easier for buyers to bring the price back up here where it's stable. So that's the gist. Again, the nitty-gritty details, but that's the important takeaway for this token liquidity app and how you exchange the token for Bitcoin Cash. And so to go back a step, this is a merit token. So the developers are rewarded in this token for the labor that they put into the community. And the token is used for governance, but you can also exchange it for Bitcoin Cash and, feed yourself. That's a kind of an important quality of it. So those are the two main, things that the token's used for, and it's used by the developers writing the software. It is not for the end user. The end users don't necessarily need to know about the token. So let's, for an example of that, I'll go into more detail on this in a minute, but fullstack.cash is a subscription service. It's $30 a month for developers to build applications, and you don't use the token to interact with this. You pay Bitcoin Cash for this service. And, that's probably a good segue into the next section. What is PSF? Let me talk. So now that I've talked a little bit about the tokens, and I haven't fully explained it, but I've tried to hint and foreshadow the full explanation, which I'm going to give once you understand what is the actual community or the organization that is the Permissionless Software Foundation. So it's part co-op business, it's part foundation, and it's part community. It's got an aspect of each one of these things, but it is not. I definitely wouldn't identify as exclusively one of these things. It's global in scope. The community is approaching 10 people now of actively participating developers and other supporters, and I'm the only American. So it's already very global in its scope and membership. And it's not a legal entity. It's not registered anywhere. It's not going to be registered anywhere. It doesn't have a bank account. It's not going to have a bank account. This is an internet-based organization, and it's going to use an internet-based money. And so it's very much in a gray area. And, one of the slides I have in here, I'll talk about sort of the gray market and how important it is to the focus of this community. It aspires to be the first decentralized autonomous organization on the Bitcoin Cash network. There are a handful of DAOs, these decentralized autonomous organizations, on the Ethereum chain, but there are none that I'm aware of on the Bitcoin Cash chain. So this is attempting to become the first DAO on the Bitcoin Cash chain. There's intended to be no central point of failure. We have to start somewhere, but very quickly this organization is changing itself into a form where no one individual is critical to the functioning of the organization, and it embraces forks. And I'm going to talk about that when I get to the governance section, but that's a really important governance mechanism, forking. So I thought I had more. Okay, so I missed this slide. Everything begins and ends with code. This is a software organization. It's not a political organization. We don't worry about the price. This is about building software, solving business problems, and getting paid to do so. It's based on the JavaScript cache stack, which was first developed at developer.bitcoin.com. And I should take a minute to explain that. Developer.bitcoin.com is a wonderful resource for Bitcoin Cash developers. It is similarly JavaScript enabled. We'll let that come up. But basically, I worked on that site for 2 years at Bitcoin.com. My name is Chris Troutner, if you're not familiar with me. I am actively involved in the Bitcoin Cash network, and I left Bitcoin.com and I started fullstack.cash. And as you can see in that little animation, it is a software stack for building applications like phone apps and web apps that can... Oh, there's a plane flying overhead. For building business applications like phone apps and web apps, like wallets, and it's a way to talk to the Bitcoin Cash blockchain using standard JavaScript-based web technology. And so this idea of that stack, that software stack, it's called the cache stack. And if you go to fullstack.cash, you can read all about it. And it's a really important concept. And so all this is a organization of software developers, mostly focusing on JavaScript and Bitcoin Cash and open source software, solving business problems. And that's what this community is. And the foundation exists to serve that community. So it's a developer-centric community that focuses on Bitcoin Cash, open source software, and the gray market. So the gray market, here's a couple good examples to explain the gray market. Marijuana is legal recreationally in the states of Washington, Oregon, California, Alaska, and Colorado. I reside in the state of Washington, and all the states have the same problem. Even though these businesses are totally legal, they cannot open bank accounts because banks, even if they're a state bank, or even though you might need to access a bank in a state, they have to follow federal guidelines, and marijuana is not legal federally. So none of these stores can accept credit cards. And it is a cash-only business, and it's a huge source of friction. So they are in a gray market. They are simultaneously legal and illegal. And so that's what I mean by a gray market. Most of the economy of Venezuela would be considered a gray market because their society has completely broken down. Their economy has completely broken down, and so almost everything that takes place, all commercial activity, would be considered a gray market, an informal market. And I expect the U.S. Gray market to increase over the years. In fact, I expect the gray market to increase significantly all over the world in proportion to the money printing and the inequality and the disenfranchisement of citizens with their governments. And this is a global phenomenon, and so I expect gray markets to expand in all countries, and it's going to be critical for the communication, secure communication and payments to be easy and frictionless for these gray markets. And that is an area where Bitcoin Cash can really make a difference in people's lives. So that's why I founded the Permissionless Software Foundation, and that's why the gray market is such a focus. It's really these three things: Bitcoin Cash, open source software, and the gray market. It's the intersection of these three fields. That's where the Permissionless Software Foundation, that's its mission, that's what it's focused on. Okay, boy, I skipped a bunch of these. Okay, so to drill down a little deeper, so that's the Permissionless Software Foundation at a high level. To drill down a little deeper, there's three main facets of the Permissionless Software Foundation. I call them the vending machine, consulting, and community. And you can read about those again on the Permissionless Software Foundation website at psfoundation.cash. So the idea is that this big gear with the code symbol, this is driving these three smaller gears, and because code drives everything. This is a software programming community. It's about writing software and solving business problems, and so the vending machines is really what fullstack.cash is built for. This software stack is for building applications, and I call them vending machines because they're coin operated. You feed them some Bitcoin Cash, and you get something out of it. Like the token liquidity app, you give it some Bitcoin Cash, it gives you tokens. Fullstack.cash, you pay a subscription fee, and you get a token, not a SLP token, but a JOT token that lets you use the REST API, the web service, for your software. There's a link here to this IPFS file hosting service, so you can pay a penny and host a file on the IPFS network. So a big part of the community, of the developer community that this organization represents, is about building these types of applications. And what they do is they burn Bitcoin Cash. So when you pay they burn SLP tokens. They burn the PSF token specifically. And that causes the value of the PSF token, the price, to rise. And so when you pay your subscription for fullstack.cash, that amount of BCH goes to the token liquidity app, and instead of exchanging the tokens for exchanging the Bitcoin Cash for tokens, that amount of tokens are burned and taken out of circulation. And so, but because going back to this curve, the Bitcoin Cash increased and the tokens decreased, so the price of the token goes up. And so all these different vending machines that we're building are going to burn tokens and cause the tokens that the developers who were rewarded in those tokens are holding to increase in price. They can trade them for more Bitcoin Cash. The second facet is similar, except it's consulting. It's reaching out to entrepreneurs who have business ideas and they need dev talent, and then finding that developer talent and sort of being the middleman, doing this consulting service. Community members are going to engage in that. We're going to negotiate contracts, and the money paid for those contracts will also go to burn tokens. And so these two facets are critical for increasing the price of the token and making this token valuable, and getting that peg established to the Bitcoin Cash, that 200 token per Bitcoin Cash peg that I had mentioned earlier. And because, just to drill down a little more on the burning, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a section here that explains the token burning, and this is the burn address. So any Bitcoin Cash sent to this address will burn the tokens rather than exchange the tokens. And by burn, I simply mean take the tokens out of circulation. Nothing is actually irreparably lost. The third aspect here is the community, and this is where the governance comes in, and I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. But people who hold the PSF token get every 3 months, every quarter, they'll get an airdrop of a funding token, a different type of token that they can use to fund grants. And this is a big part of the government's mechanism, and I'll go into this in a minute. I'll go into that next, I think. Okay, so let's talk about governance and grants and governance, because that's this third aspect of the organization, and it's really important. The governance is largely mechanical. It's largely automated. and it takes place through funding grants via the token, Lumio and Telegram, which is our way we communicate, and forking, and I'll talk about forking in a minute. But right now we're getting ready to kick off our very first round of grants. So if you go to the menu, you can go to the grants page. I'll do a separate video talking about the actual grants for this round, but right now I'm going to talk about just grants in general. We're going to do this every quarter, every 3 months. People who have held PSF tokens for 2 months, they can't have moved. They need to sit in the address and they can't have moved. That's what makes it scarce. Those tokens every 3 months will receive a new funding token that will be airdropped to them. And then those people can go to this page and look at the different people, projects, and bounties that they want to fund, and they can send their funding tokens to these QR addresses, and then at some point there will be a 2-week window. The addresses that the grants that are funded will be airdropped PSF tokens 1-to-1 with those funding tokens. So the people receiving the funding token, the only thing that they can, it has no marketable value. The only thing they can do with it is fund these grants. That's the only thing it can be used for. And then these grants, they get the airdrop of actually newly minted PSF tokens, and that's as long as there's a peg to Bitcoin Cash and those tokens can be exchanged for money, that's an incentive for someone to work on these bounties. So this is how the community, this is the foundation aspect. This is how the community funds common goods that can't necessarily be monetized directly. And this is how we build common good infrastructure. And it's a very important problem in the open source world that has yet to be solved, to fund common good infrastructure. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So that's the funding and the grant. So I should take a minute to talk about the people part. So I'm Chris Troutner. This is me. I am taking the title of head janitor, and I'm part of the management. There's also these other people that are funded that are part of the management that are focused on sort of core administration. And so we, like everything else, are subject to getting funded by grants. And so this is how the community can hire and fire me and anybody else who would take the title of management on, is they can simply choose to not fund them with these funding tokens. And that is essentially the governance. That by holding this token, participating in that airdrop grant cycle, this is how the people who hold these merit tokens inform the management of what they want the focus to be on, and where they want the community to go, and so it's a very blunt instrument, and in order to have more of a fine-grained communication, our two main channels, actually I should add here, is GitHub. We're going to communicate on Telegram. Lumio is a website that allows for really good democratic communication. You can take polls and everybody can get their voice heard. It's a really high quality website that focuses on that form of communication. So if we really need to get official and formal, we can use that site. Because this is a community of coders, we're mostly just going to communicate through code. We're through GitHub and GitHub issues and repositories and those tools as well. So these are going to be the communications tools that the community will use to talk with stakeholders and management and community members. And then finally there's forking, and I need to take a minute to talk about this. And again, the nitty-gritty details are in the business plan under this chapter called Mitigating Catastrophic Failure. And what this talks about is there is unclear regulations. There's unclear enforcement. We are a global community, and so the jurisdiction in one area is not the same elsewhere. We could get our keys hacked or embezzled. All these problems exist, and so the way that we can mitigate these catastrophic failures is to fork. And so because all of these tokens are recorded on the blockchain, at any moment in time, or at any block height, I should say, we know exactly what addresses held what tokens. And so if there's any issue with like a hack, or the founders get thrown in jail or something, any one person can look at the history of these tokens. They can create a new token, airdrop it to all the addresses, and just keep chugging along. And all the software is MIT licensed and open source, so anybody can fork the software and just keep chugging along. And we're going to follow best practices, the management, in terms of having multi-signature wallets for minting new tokens and for holding the balances. And so any one person disappearing for whatever reason would not seriously jeopardize the organization. So that's how, by doing everything transparently and on the blockchain, it helps to mitigate a lot of these potentially catastrophic situations. And so, and it also, one of those other situations that it helps mitigate is discontent. If there's some irreconcilable disagreement, sorry, I can't pronounce that word. If community members just don't like where things are going and they want to do things differently, they can do the same thing. They can airdrop a new token, they can fork the software, and we can split off and create two organizations. And that is going to be embraced. It's voice and exit. So it's sort of the nuclear option, but it's going to be a very important part of this organization as we grow, and it's always going to be a potential for someone to hit the eject button and for a minority group to fork off, and that's going to be encouraged and embraced and anticipated. I talked about private keys. We're going to follow best practices with multi-signatures, so that we need like 3 of 5 or 5 of 7 in order to mint new tokens or unlock any Bitcoin Cash in the token liquidity app. We're going to use the blockchain to maintain transparency, so everything will be auditable. And even though we are building tools for privacy, the organization itself will operate in a very transparent manner, and we expect our community to keep us honest upon that. And we have a website and we have social media, and we will use that the management will use that to communicate with the wider community. So the code, where's the code? It's primarily on GitHub under the Permissionless Software Foundation organization. Oh, here's the developer.bitcoin.com. So this is the website I used to work on. These are the tools. All of our tools at fullstack.cash are forked off of these open source tools. So the Permissionless Software Foundation, all of our code exists here on GitHub. Everything from the website to the token liquidity app to every aspect of what this community works on. It's all about code, and everything is 100% open source, MIT licensed. And it's everything, like I said, everything is based on the Cash stack, which was originally developed at Bitcoin.com. It uses a stack of JavaScript tools and infrastructure to build a REST API and JavaScript libraries that web apps and phone apps can use to talk to the blockchain and interact with it. And So the cache stack. Let me talk about the cache stack in this wallet. The cache stack is here, and you can read about that. And at the very top of the cache stack is your app. It talks to the JavaScript library. And one instance of that app can be seen by going to wallet.fullstack.cache. This is also an open source web wallet that we are going to give away for free, and we are going to encourage businesses to white label. And it's the architecture of it. It's been iterated over several versions now, or it's learned the lessons, I should say, from other web wallets that have made mistakes in the past. And it's built in a very modular way. It's going to use Gatsby and React, and my internet connection is really slow right now. That's why it's taking forever. But it's not fully functional yet, which is part of the reason why it's taking so long to load. But let me just talk about it here. It's going to be a web wallet, and it's going to be a very minimalist wallet, and it's going to have the idea behind it is that anything that can be an add-on will be an add-on. So HD wallet support will be an add-on. Cache shuffle will be an add-on. NFT tokens will probably be an add-on. There's several add-ons in the works, and so you'll basically mix and match. Any company that wants to build their own web wallet will simply figure out what add-ons they want to put in there and compile it, change a few colors, and bam, they have their own web wallet to work with. And my internet may have actually gone down, so we'll move on. But check that out when you get a chance. I'm going to do some more videos on that. So let me summarize here and wrap this up. First and foremost, the Permissionless Software Foundation is a community of software developers. And that's anything else it is a community of software developers first. The token may or may not be money. That is very unclear at this point. But it is definitely open source software. Like I said, everything starts and begins with code. This is a software experiment, and that is definitely free speech, and that is definitely protected by the First Amendment. It's okay if you don't like some of the ideas presented here, and it's okay if the Permissionless Software Foundation is not for you. That is okay. But this is a new use of SLP tokens. It's a new use of a lot of different technologies. And so maybe there is an idea here that you could use for your own. And if there is, maybe we can work with you. Like I said, a big part of this is going to be consulting. And we are a community, so we are open to ideas and new direction. The rules are certainly not fixed, and we will certainly make mistakes. The governance is intended to inform the management every 3 months, and the community adapts from there. It's just like sailing a boat. The wind shifts, and you change the boat accordingly. And most importantly, again, need to emphasize this is an experiment. It will probably fail. But if it succeeds, or if it is iterated on and some iteration succeeds, it will be a whole new business model. It will have solved this critically important problem of underfunded open source infrastructure, which is a huge problem and encompasses much more than the Bitcoin space. So how can you participate? Couple actionable things you can do. Go to psfoundation.cash, scroll to the bottom, you'll see a link to our Telegram group. Get in there and start chatting, but also be forewarned, we're not going to talk about price, we're not going to talk about philosophy, we're not going to be tribal. We're JavaScript developers building tools, solving hair on fire problems. That's the focus, and we're not going to get bogged down by anything else. And then the second actionable thing to do, hopefully you are a JavaScript developer or a developer who is okay with JavaScript or a crypto-curious JavaScript developer, work through the BCH.js example code. And you can get there by going to fullstack.cache, scrolling down, going to examples, and my internet might be down, so this, okay, you can't, oh yeah, right, because it's a Gatsby app. Right here, click on the examples, watch these videos. This will introduce you to the cache stack and the tools that we use and that this organization is based on. Okay, that was a long one. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this. I would love to hear your ideas, and I'm probably going to hear the complaints as well. Join the Telegram group, and that's where you'll find me, Chris Troutner.